So welcome everybody to another episode of Environmental Social Justice. We have Elvis in the building today. We have Dr. Elvis Hernandez of 𝑂SL Risk. And today we are going to be talking about SDGs, or Sustainable Development Goals, and how it interacts with ESG, which is Environmental Social Governance. So welcome to the house, Elvis. Take the lead.
Okay. Give me 1 second just to verify that everything is working perfect on my side.
I have your slides ready to go.
Perfect. Give me one just to close something here on my mobile for reducing any noise in the background. Okay.
Very good.
Let me close this.
I'm dying to just make Elvis puns while we're setting it.
I know. I'm holding back.
Are we gonna have a less conversation? Like, what are we gonna do?
Yeah. Well, Wendy.
Way cooler though. He's more funnier too.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, I have two screens here. This is my slide. If I move this side, don't feel like I'm disrespecting you. I'm just looking at my screen on this side. Okay.
We got you, Dr.
Elvis.
Well, Wendy, thank you so much for the invitation. How are you? Hello, Joel and Joy. Nice to meet you. Good morning on your side in the United States of America, and good afternoon from the United Kingdom. Thank you so much for your invitation to this channel, this podcast, Environmental Social Justice. And I'm really happy to share some information about strategic analysis on Sustainable Development Goals, or SDGs, and the role of ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance across organizations. I'm going to touch these topics from a risk management perspective.
Perfect.
Perfect.
Do you want me to pull up your slides so people can see them?
No. I'm okay in the slides, right?
I can pull it up.
Yes.
They are up right now. There you go.
Perfect. Spot on. Okay. This is my title. Okay, perfect. Let me go back. You already introduced me, Wendy. What I can say, I'm living in United Kingdom. I'm Executive Director of 𝑂SL Risk Management. Our area of expertise as a company is data analytics, software consulting, and executive education around ESG, by the way, corporate governance, and quantitative risk management. I also collaborate with scholars, with researchers, with some people from the media, bringing these topics such as corporate governance, risk management, resilience, and real options. And please feel free, I'm talking right now to your audience, feel free to contact me by email, or in case you want to send a Christmas card online. Well, the agenda for today, and I want to keep these topics quite open. Please, Joel and Joy, you can jump in and make any questions you have in representation of the audience. The main topic here, or the area that I want to cover, is giving you, first of all, a global overview on Sustainable Development Goals and environmental, social, and governance. Of course, I would like to look at these two topics from an integration way. So let's talk about how we can integrate these topics and why it's so difficult for organizations and government agencies getting the common points around ESG and SDGs.
Oh, yes.
And know something, that there are a lot of organizations nowadays trying to solve this puzzle. Okay? There are a lot of areas to analyze, many risks. But at the same time, and probably Wendy, we have this conversation a while ago, that there is a lot of misinformation because these areas are bringing a lot of costs for organizations. And if they don't have a clear picture, what does it mean, ESG, and how we can relate environmental, social, and governance practices into the Sustainable Development Goals, probably there are organizations that are being exposed to important sunk costs, okay?
Okay.
And finally, I would like to provide a little bit my strategic view on this topic from a risk management perspective. But like Wendy mentioned, every little bit helps. I think we need to start any of our presentations, and I'm doing that for a long time, talking a little bit about climate change. And remember that this is probably the most critical risk that we are facing as a society. It includes physical, financial risk, transition risk, and opportunities as well. And that climate change, we need to reemphasize that is impacting on community, markets, consumer, countries, and unfortunately is the bill that we are transferring to our future generation. And all these areas of ESG, Sustainable Development Goals, in the end, when they are talking about, try to understand and to map the climate change actions, everything reached the point that climate change is an investment risk. How to manage the amount of money required by governments, organizations to mitigate this problem is one of the biggest key questions nowadays. Even for me as a professional, doing a lot of consultancy services in this area, still we don't have a clear agenda on how, what areas, in what cases, what countries, what companies, what countries are absorbing that amount of money in order to start overcoming climate change. Okay?
Okay.
Okay. In terms of the global overview, I want to illustrate the following. Okay? Notice that marketing and social media have a vast power to reach everyone. And now ESG and sustainable development goals looks like something new, right? Is that there are the trending topics. But in reality, they have been in the literature and in the mind of the decision maker for a long time. For example, when we are talking about sustainable development goals, we are talking about country level actions. And there is an important point here. It's not new because even this topic was introduced in 1992 by the United Nations members when they put on the agenda sustainable development. Even I remember Wendy and Joel, in 2010, when I was completing in 2001, sorry, when I was completing my degree in economics, I had the opportunity to start working in a central bank analyzing the Millennium Development Goals. Look at this. They rebranded something that we had in 1992 into the Millennium Development Goal. Of course, at that time, poverty was the main area that they wanted to study and start solving the problem of poverty worldwide. Okay? And now in 2015, they adopt the Sustainable Development Goals, 17 goals or macro goals. And at the same time, during that year, they introduce or they adopt the Paris Agreement on climate change. My point here, I want to make clear my point here, that I'm not interested in evaluating whether those goals were achieved or not. There is a lot of literature on people supporting the goals and other people opposing or creating other ideas against the goals, whether these goals were achieved or not. My point here that I want to emphasize is we as a citizens, we as a stakeholders of companies, organizations, that we are looking for that our policymaker become a little bit more accountable. We need to scrutinize, and evaluate the actions behind these goals, whether the policymaker are going to hit the targets and what are the implications for our economies. Okay, because we are talking about poverty, we are talking about hunger, climate action, gender equality, sustainability, renewable energy, and so on and so forth. Okay. When we are talking about, sorry, go ahead.
I was just saying, you know what's daunting about all this is when you actually see the dates in front of you. Like, we know these conversations have been going on for a long time, but now we actually see 30 years in, and we're not much better off than we were. You know, I mean, and I think this, like you said, the social media and all these things are playing impact. So now we actually see them more often, for better or worse. But there's also a lot of disinformation out there. So it's like we're kind of treading water to move forward, which is really frustrating to see, especially when you see it's been 30 years of this.
So, totally agree, Joel. And you know what is frustrating as well? That we have the sustainable development goals adopted in 2015. We are in 2022. And there are targets that need to be hit in 2030. And still there are countries bargain, trying to, hey, I need help because I don't have infrastructure, I don't have the human capital to start solving the problem, the real problem we are having as a country.
Yeah, and they also just don't have the money to solve it.
Yes.
Money is the big thing. Money is the big thing. And then you also, you know, there's so many things going on right now in the world that, you know, large companies are trying to tackle, like some of the larger banks and institutions, whether it's ESG or social justice or equality or women's rights issues. Where do these companies get the money to pay their salaries besides decreasing the salaries, which is like a whole nother thing? Where do they get the money to fund these type of programs? And, you know, how do they prioritize them when there's so much going on in the world right now?
Totally agree. And really good point, Joy, because this is now, look at this. This is, if you see here around the ESG is the policy maker agenda, let's say in that way. Inside of ESG is like the role of companies, corporations, small, medium companies, right? So here is like we have two different entities trying to transfer the risk from one side to the other side, right? And when we see inside ESG also, and now you can see, well, if you can see the sustainable development goals apply to country level, at firm level, everything is around ESG, environmental, social, and corporate governance. But as well, these topics are not new. Of course, has been evolving across years, especially after these markets events. For example, financial crisis, when you see a corporation with lack of transparency or conflict of interest, inadequate managerial performance, and so forth and so on. These are, remember, ESG are like the best practices, the best mechanisms organization can use to overcome certain problems. But coming back to Joel's point of view, the critical question here is who to blame when things goes wrong.
Oh, all of us. That's an easy one to answer.
Yes, exactly. However, to scrutinize these areas, we need data. Okay, who is going to provide the data? Of course, we have organizations selling data on this area, but where are the public entities that are going to provide this information, not in a 100 pages report, not in 300 corporate governance report for a listed company. We need to get information quick, and I think we as a stakeholder we need to play an important role asking, demanding information, but as well, other organizations need to help us obtaining this information because that is key for supporting our decisions and at the same time overseeing how companies perform, especially in the best interest of the shareholder and stakeholders, and at the same time how policymakers work on the benefit for the benefit of their citizens.
But it's also about making sure that whatever information we get isn't skewed. Because I think that's one of the biggest issues that we're seeing, and it's been happening more and more, whether it's here or it's overseas or it's anywhere.
Yes.
Everybody has their agenda. And it used to be that everybody would actually say, like, okay, I have my agenda. Let's work together to find the common ground and actually do something to try to improve life for everybody. That, I think, is the part that's been eroded. And I don't know how that gets built back.
Yes, and I think, guys, from your perspective in managing this podcast in environmental social justice, you are playing an important role as well because you are bringing professionals, people that in certain ways they are socializing these concepts, and we need to have more, and especially for and there is a overlapping generation problem. Okay. Now, I don't know if we are going to be around here to check, hey guys, we hit the targets 2050, we are okay. And the problem that we are having is an overlapping generation problem. So we are not preparing our next generation, next generation to make organizations and policymakers or whoever is going to be there to make them accountable of the action and decision that they are taking today. Okay. And now I would like just to introduce briefly what we were mentioning. Well, this is the agenda of the policymaker and multilateral organizations, sustainable development goals. And the other important point here from the risk management perspective, because I've been working as well with some local government agencies and policymakers, understanding a little bit these dynamics, that the sustainable development goals are quite fragile because they are affected by political crisis. Look at this. Russia invade Ukraine and immediately changed the international perspective of many organizations and countries, right? It's affected by economic crisis and as well the backlog effect of the climate change because, sorry, every day that we are not doing something, we are accumulating CO2 emissions. We are accumulating the probability of something wrong happening in terms of flooding, in terms of fire, and so on. Look at this. I don't know, the last 10 years, how many times California has been exposed to fire. Okay.
Oh, yeah. And high heat.
And gas prices that have shot up, due to the war. I mean, it's unsustainable for people to even drive cars, at least out here in California.
Yes. And the other, Joy, and another important point that you also put on the table and brought me new ideas about these topics is like, are we preparing our next generation for overcoming this problem? We need a lot of engineers, right? A lot of people with technical skills, because we are talking about that climate change. You need to think about that companies need to change infrastructure, need to change assets, need to integrate those assets with other projects, because in the end, sorry, we are not living in, I don't know, in 5 centuries ago, where, well, we have to bring wood to cook our meals, right? Now we need energy, we need things, we need commodities, we need to produce, because we are living in another generation. So,
and people need to be trained. It's not like 500 years ago when you rub sticks together and get fire. People need to be trained, and due to the pandemic and other things, a lot of people are not even going to school. They're not even on the track to go to engineering school or mathematics or lots of the technical things that
Totally agree.
we're going to need. So there's definitely going to be a reversion there that's going to limit what we can provide as far as ESG and in the environmental structure. It's a little bit scary. Don't want to be Dr. Doom and Gloom, Dr. Elvis, but it's these are problems. These are problems that corporations and individuals are going to have to figure out as to where their place in this society is really going to be to make significant changes. Not be famous, but make significant changes and be significant in life.
Yes, totally agree. And unfortunately, we cannot read 300 pages of strategies, right? But at least if we want to, this is something that Wendy asked me as well. Elvis, can you at least help us to, what are the key performance indicators we can use as a citizens, as a regular decision makers, to monitor whether those countries that are planning to overcome or to work on the best interest of the sustainable development goals are providing certain information for us to support our action and decision. Yes, we can see if those countries are not having clear ideas to control inflation, the volatility of interest rates, the foreign exchange rates, other indicators we have there, we need to scrutinize them. Hey guys, you are going to receive a lot of money to overcome your main problems as a country, as a society. You need to control or have quality around the institutions to keep these variables in shape. And that can kill, if we don't control inflation and we go to the supermarket, sorry, all our salaries, that's at least we are living above certain level of poverty. Sorry, if the inflation is going up, the salaries are not willing to fulfill our obligation, our needs in terms of goods and services that we need to live. I think, in my opinion, and I think investigating, working with other scholars, the huge or the key uncertainties around the sustainable development goals are around how feasible the action plan of the policymaker are, and at the same time, where the money is coming from, and what is the role of the private sector. For the role of private sector, definitely, we have a little bit, because we remember policymakers are passing the risk, transferring risk, certain risk to corporation as well. And you can see that environmental, social, and governance is the agenda of the corporation. Organizations need to start doing something, showing something that they need to comply, disclose what actions, what projects, what strategies they have to overcome environmental, social, and corporate governance risk, practices, mechanisms, and so on. And
I was going to add real quick also people that understand what that means, because as Elvis and I had previously discussed, when ESG first kind of became popular a few years back and more people were paying attention to it, those who were being assigned the ESG roles didn't necessarily have the understanding, and that's when we started to see greenwashing, because there was just a lack of knowledge, and that's what we're trying to fix. That's what Elvis is working on, is guiding people, educating people and what these mean.
And remember, organization already, they need to comply with the financial statements. They need to comply that they have strategies, they are mitigating risk. And organizations are receiving this new pressure by regulator, by the society, that they need to account and report environmental, social, and corporate governance practice. Of course, coming back the same idea and the conversation I had with Wendy, definitely ESG can create massive opportunity for organizations to organize their houses, right? And but there is something here. If the organization is not integrating these areas, these criteria into the business models, they can generate huge risks as well. Because imagine hiring a risk manager, auditors, external companies, implementing, changing processes. All these areas impact on stock returns, cost of capital, stock options, dividend policies, valuation, and so forth. So it's like a coming back to the Joel point of view. Is okay, that can increase a lot of the burden for managers, stakeholders, because they need to reallocate resources. If they don't do it well, who is going to pay the bill? The shareholders, the investors, and employees, because in the end, managers are not prepared to overtake this type of strategies.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Let me show you briefly how we can integrate these two areas. Okay. Because this is something probably, Wendy, this is something that we can provide to our community. How other organizations are taking these two areas into account. Okay. And this is key, because we can understand a little bit that sustainable development goals and ESG, environmental, social, they can work together. And when you have a strategy, of course, manager, investors, stakeholders, and shareholders, they can see where the money is coming in and where the money is impacting on the organization.
And that's key, right? Yeah, that's what the bottom line is, what they call it. That's key for any corporation or any person to have, is the bottom line.
Yes, exactly. And the best way to create a value enhancement strategy around the ESG implementation is mapping. Look at this, mapping ESG.
Yeah.
Across the goals you are having. It's like a killing two birds with one stone, right? But I'm not going to use the killing. I prefer using achieving two things by doing only one action, right? Or a single action. And but the problem that we are having, Wendy, is, and Joel and Joy, is decision makers need to validate the company strategy, because well, I've been investigating and using probably around 1,700 indicators around ESG, mapping them across 169 items for sustainable development goals, but not all of them applies to the same company. For example, if we have an energy company working in climate change and decarbonization, which is something that is an alive project that we have, we can see here that this company is working, targeting decarbonization, climate change, okay? And they said, well, we need to work on carbon emissions, footprint, financing environmental impact, and they are allocating money in this area. Probably if the moment that's in the international accounting standards, the board of the international accounting standards, they start providing better information how organization can account for climate change, and at the same time how organization can report this information. They are ready to start disclosing how much money they are putting around here. At the same time, I know that these companies are investing in new patents, new processes. Doesn't mean they are investing in a sustainable business model. Of course, not all of the organizations are doing these type of things, but at the same time, when they are engaging with the local government agencies in terms of sustainable development goals, they can have a really nice conversation about climate change, innovation, quality of education, and so on and so forth. And unfortunately, and when did you know that? Because we came from the corporate world, of course, there is out there a lot of competition from managerial consulting companies and other companies trying to push their agenda to, of course, to which is reasonable, making money, making profit, but they are not allowing organizations to make more flexible the business models, how they can, and because their organizations are receiving that huge pressure, that is the time when they start talking with the PR companies, the marketing companies, and start communicating that they are doing something, but in the end, it's only a message. Spending time and money claiming that they are ESG compliance. And that is what we call greenwashing, because they are not doing anything, but they need to show the investors, the stakeholders, and shareholders that they are doing something. And this is a huge problem nowadays.
Oh, yeah, we see it all the time. People saying we're going to be net zero by 2030. Well, how are you going to do that?
Yes.
We are.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Magic?
Yes.
Basically.
Yes. I would like to show you, guys, this is something that I always use with my MBA students and PhD students, okay? Because we need to understand that there are conflict of interest around all of this, because Joy mentioned, money need to be in the equation, because we need to reallocate, we need to invest, we need to pay salaries, we need to pay dividends to our investors, we need to pay sometimes the debt, because companies adopt or acquire certain debt to finance growth and so on. And I would like to show this triangle of conflict of interest, because we need to understand the role of the shareholders, the role of the managers, and the stakeholders. Of course, in listed companies, you have the board members in the middle, because the board members should oversee managers and protect the shareholders against those managerial opportunistic strategies. Manager becoming bigger, but in the end, they are paying a lot of bonuses, a lot of salaries for themselves, a lot of vacation, but the company is suffering because they are not investing money in the right areas the organization should be investing. Okay, and if we are able to understand a little bit what are the responsibilities, where are the responsibilities, it's easy for us to map ESG and sustainable development goals. Okay, and especially because climate change requires a lot of investments, stakeholders and shareholders, especially shareholders, need to make more accountable, oversee directly what shareholders and managers are doing, because they need to be accountable for action and decisions to accelerate the decarbonization. But we need to recognize as well that as a citizens, we need to make sure our policymakers are also responsible for their action and decision. And we need to train, coming back to the point of Joy, train the next and the next and the next generation on how they can make organizations and policymakers more accountable. And notice something really important here. Remember, in big companies, especially large corporations, the government is also a shareholder, because they cannot pay dividends, they cannot retain earnings if they don't pay the corporate taxes. So the government requires as well creating opportunities for working in the same line, because across taxes, across corporation taxes, VAT, employment taxes, the government as well is surviving. So if the organizations and policymakers are doing wrong decision and they're not working the best interest, definitely the taxpayer, and this is something that Wendy mentioned before, in the end, taxpayers are paying the bill, especially for the urbanization, because we are paying higher insurance costs. We are exposed to higher inflation rates, interest rates, electricity prices, and fuel costs. So we are paying the bill. We are currently paying the bill for decarbonization.
So if we look at your presentation here, why don't you have citizen or consumer listed as a stakeholder?
And this is a good question. I think academics should start putting that into the equation, right? I think
because it seems like every person on there, the one stakeholder is the citizen and the consumer.
Yes,
because
exactly.
their dollar and their vote are the ones that are going to impact everything going forward.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes. Well, Wendy, I think I try to, oh my gosh, putting all the topics you asked me for together, okay, in a
And I thank you for
smooth
that.
way, okay? And well, I think from now on, any question is welcome. I think, Joy, you have some amazing points to share. Joel, as well, from your perspective. And Wendy, well, I think we can open the conversation, and any question probably the audience have, happy to to take it.
Well, I'm just excited to have a partner across the pond that sees things the way that we see it. And I'm looking forward to, hanging out with you more often on the podcast and just, truly thinking about how we merge these two subjects together and how we get corporations to really see
transparency.
what the impacts are. Yeah, the transparency, the true impacts, and what they could really do to get this, really going as far as ESG is concerned.
Yeah.
So it's exciting.
Well, one thing to add into that with transparency is I've noticed a lot of the American corporations, because the states are a little bit behind what Europe is doing, but American corporations are linking their executives' bonus pay, which we know for large corporations, that's tens of millions of dollars, to their ESG goals.
Yeah.
And hopefully that means, real ESG goals and not greenwashing goals, but they're actually holding people accountable now, which is very nice to see.
And the other problem as well is how the current managers that they have stock options, they are going to behave, because they are trying to exercise that options early, or looking forward to overtake certain actions and decisions to cash out. And this is why, coming to the Joel point of view, is well, we need an organization overseeing this type of behavior. I noticed that I have an article, one of my students sent it yesterday, that there is an organization in Germany and UK that they are suing gas companies for no disclosing accordingly the strategy for overcoming climate change and start decarbonizing. So we need to have, I don't know, in the same way, I noticed that in America it's quite common having these legal firms having clinics on helping people that's, sorry, the system, the justice system has been playing them in certain injustices, but we need organizations as well protecting the interests of the citizens and the stakeholders and the consumers, and taking legal actions. Sorry, go ahead, John.
I know, sorry. I'm just saying it's actually funny that you bring that up, because I'm like thinking about some of the items on the chart, and I'm like, wow, we are getting further and further away from these things, whether it's, clean drinking water, we still have lead pipes. We have gender equality. We've got a lot of laws coming on the books in our country which are ripping that to shred. Healthcare, which is good, it's unaffordable and unattainable for too many people. I mean, so it's like, it feels like we're getting further and further. But then to the point that you were just talking about, we're in an era of incredible inflation. So all the prices are going up, and executive salaries are going up at the same time. And look, I don't begrudge anybody making money. I have no issue with that whatsoever. What I have the concerns about are the executives getting their bonuses, and then it comes down to the consumer who's trying to just put food on their table, paying more to keep these bonuses going, as opposed to saying, you know what, I've had 10 or X amount of years of incredible growth. Let me plateau to avoid some of this impacting the consumer. So I'm like, this is kind of like where I'm like, I think I love the concept. I just feel like we're getting further and further away from these goals.
Yeah.
Which is heartbreaking and distressing.
Yes, that's true. That's true. And well, coming back to the slogan of environmental social justice, the podcast, I think every little thing helps, right?
Every little bit. Yeah.
Yeah, every little bit helps. And this, well, I'm not trying to solve all the problems, just some of them.
Yeah.
Why not? What else you got to do?
Yeah.
Yeah, you're not that busy, Elvis.
Yeah,
You know?
and this is the advice for companies and organizations working on this area. Don't try to solve everything. Just get some of them. You increase reputation. You increase. You show the investor that you are hitting the targets. You are doing something, and carry on and carry on. Don't try to solve all the problem in one go. Don't allow consulting companies and external advisors telling you that you have to solve everything because you don't have the resources for doing it.
I think what's really great to see, though, is actually see things like the presentation we just saw. You actually see things in writing. So it's easier to digest it as opposed to all of these outliers where you're like, oh, I got this, then I got this, then I got this, then I got this. You can actually see it and focus on like, oh, shoot, there's a lot of issues that we need to address. And it's like anything in life. Don't take on everything. Take on one to three things that you can actually focus on and get them done. You don't have to do it all.
It'll be too overwhelming for most people to try to do everything at once.
Yeah. And you know, Wendy, you came from health, safety, environment, and you know how complex for at least big corporations, especially in oil and gas, energy, manufacturing, mining, and so on and so forth, start complying with all these areas in one go. It's so costly. And
Yeah.
not allocating
And
the
people are very
resources.
cost conscious, especially now.
Yeah. Well, spot on.
No, excellent presentation, and I do thank you for taking a little extra time with us today just to show us all of your slides and how. Sorry.
I really enjoy it. This is my point, and now I extend as well my network. Joel, nice to meet you, and it was an amazing opportunity sharing a little bit of this idea with you all.
Oh, we'll see you soon. We'll definitely see you soon.
Yeah. We're gonna have to do some follow-ups, and
we'll have to have a little more conversation.
Yeah, and you see there every goal. You have a lot of areas to continue enhancing your podcast. I can tell you 1,700 items in SG. Everyone requires time. So that doesn't mean your podcast is going to
Joel
the
just
sky.
Yeah. No, I mean, no, we definitely want to do a follow-up. And also for people that are new to ESG and SDGs, which is Sustainable Development Goals, look up Elvis, look up OSL Risk, because they can help you navigate these waters. Hopefully that's okay with you that I'm kind of pitching for you a little bit, Elvis.
Oh, thank you so much. They can help you guys
navigate. And this is not easy. This is new. It's a little bit challenging, but you will get through it. Small steps, every little bit. And I will leave it at that. And I'm hoping, Elvis, maybe in a couple months you come back and maybe we'll dive a little deeper.
Yes, exactly. And I can showcase some of the current results we are having for some organizations and understanding a little bit the role of some policymakers. I'm happy to share a little bit our learning process and bringing other guys that as well. I don't have all the answers, but definitely I can help you to get somebody at least to guide us during that journey.
I'm always telling people you don't have to have all the answers. And for people who say you have to have the answers, no, that's not true. We're all figuring this out together. We're all adapting and learning. So with that, I thank you guys. And we will definitely see you soon. Take care, everyone, and we will see you shortly.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Have a good rest of the day. Bye-bye.